those that have just joined, if everyone could please turn their cameras off and mic your microphones, and mute your microphones rather, and you'll see the chat on the right hand side. Please feel free to tell us who you are, put your name in there and your company, just so that Ryan, Lee and I have got a bit of context as to who's on the call. That'll be helpful for us. Also, please use it to comment. So we're going to be popping out questions and asking what you're doing. So it's always more fun on these things when everyone's getting involved. So feel free to add in any comments on or questions for Ryan and Lee. That would be awesome. So I'm not going to introduce you. I'm going to let you introduce yourselves. Lee, do you want to start? We've done this many times together before, so I feel like we're old hats at this. But if you could let us know who you are, your background, where you work, what you're doing, that would be superb.
Okay, I'm just seeing how many names are coming up that I know. It's scary in our incestuous industry. So my name's Lee Woolley. I am the Director of Learning and Organisation Development at Stonegate Pub Group. Getting used to saying that now, so the name's changed. So we have over 5,000 sites, roughly 800 managed, about 400 that are, for all intents and purposes, franchised, and then about 3,500 sites that are leased and tenanted, with about 17,000 employees. So in the last year, where we bought and merged with Enterprise Inns, that has thrown up very different challenges to what maybe we've faced before, because in the 10 years of its existence, Stonegate's always been managed pubs, which are, as you imagine, throw some problems up, but very different to franchise and leased and tenanted. And then with the question, sorry, I've been in the industry since I was 18, so at least 10 years. Been in the industry all my working life, so feel like I belong here.
Awesome. It's hard to watch though, right? When you've been in the industry all your working life, it's hard to watch right now the difficulties across the industry, especially when you love it as much as we do. And
yeah, horrific. But at least we're on the same boat together.
Well, exactly right. And hopefully trying to do as much as we can to help each other where we can. Ryan, do you want to give us a bit of an intro to yourself and your background and what you're doing with Constellation and Levy?
Yeah, so Ryan Ashton, I'm the Director of Constellation, which is a new internal connected workforce for the entire of Compass and the Levy branding across the UK and Ireland. We started a new business in the pandemic, which is probably the toughest thing that we've ever had to do to mobilise our workforce. So we have in excess of 16,000 variable workforce and close to similar amounts of permanent workforce that got stuck in the furlough risk of redundancy process. So we created an internal part of the business that can help move these wonderful people across different sectors of our business and trying to really break down the silos that exist between businesses of our size. I've been around for only in hospitality and catering for most of my life since I was 14 years old as a pot wash. So again, a bit like Lee for about 10 years. And I love this industry. I've been through many different challenges, and this is without doubt the toughest period of time I've ever known. But in every crisis that's come out of it, there is some amazing stories that we've seen where we've got chefs that have been helping out in testing centres on car parks and those sorts of things. So without doubt, it's shown the diverse nature and the way that we can utilise the skill sets of our people to be able to move very quickly, very mobile within a variety of different industries, and it's been really eye-opening, Ellie.
Absolutely. And I remember the first meeting that we had and you telling me about the project and me just being like, what? You did what now? Incredible. But also that's what I love about times like this, right? People do start to behave and become really dynamic and look at things really differently. And a lot of the big companies that I've spoken to have commented on actually where things usually would have taken a lot of time and had to go through a lot of red tape. Actually now there's no time for that. So people are just able to crack on and be quite dynamic and innovative about what they're doing. So both of you, I'm sure, have experienced a bit of that. I should probably introduce the topic of what we're talking about. I think hopefully you all know. Hopefully, I'm Ellie Johnston, by the way, Sales Director at Flow. So I think most of you will know me. And welcome. I'm seeing lots of names pop up as well. I can see Gurjit from Mayborn Hotel Group. Nice to see you. Springboard guys, nice to see you too. Tons of people here. I can't call everyone out. So I guess this topic, we're hearing a lot from people across the board that obviously with natural attrition and with redundancies, etc. People are working at a much smaller staff base right now than they ever have before. So you guys can give us your numbers, but anywhere between 20% and 50% of what they would normally be working at. So if where we can't wait to get to, we go back to full capacity of hospitality and people hungry and thirsty to eat out and drink out, we're going to need to get those resourcing levels back up. So I think all of us are aware there's going to be a big challenge of increased recruitment and onboarding for this year, possibly the biggest year for onboarding and recruitment that the industry's ever seen. So just I get on that note, would be interesting to just start with a bit of where you guys are at as your businesses. Maybe Lee, you could kick off for Stonegate. How have you, Matt, handled the process? What are your levels now, and kind of what are the numbers that you need to hire over the next few months to get ready for reopening?
God, I suppose like everybody, it really does depend on when we're allowed to reopen and what that's going to look like in terms of whether that's going to be. There's various rumours going around. 1st of May, gloves off, everyone can open, down to tiers reopening from the end of April. I think one of the hardest things in large businesses, probably in all businesses, but is what actually is that number we're going to need? Because when workforce in managed, we've got about 14,000. Actually staying in touch with them and finding out who still works for us and who's preparing to come back. So we've put an estimate that we're looking for 4,000 people when we come back, which is a bit of a sobering number. But I also think it's a great opportunity to say, I've always said this about our industry, is it's a meritocracy. If people join, they join the business and they join hospitality because they like the social life coming to them. And actually you can move up at pace. And where at the age of 22 can you run a £2 million week business employing 40 people? There's not many industries that allow that. So I think that's a good note, but I think we'd be a little bit arrogant if we just thought that was going to encourage 4,000 people just to come to Stonegate. In fact, people don't come to Stonegate; they come to the Red Lion or the Slug and Lettuce or the Be It One. They don't come to work for Stonegate. So I think that, in short, we're looking at 4,000. That's our estimate. We're hoping that a lot of our teams come back to us. We think we've treated them really well through lockdown and stayed engaged with them. But I don't think we know, Ellie. So yeah, 4,000 is our estimate.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And 4,000 is a huge number. So intimidating on one side to think, how on earth are we going to recruit and train all those people? But also on the other side, what a positive message to say 4,000 people who are currently out of a job will be in a job because of hospitality. So yeah. How about you, Ryan? How's the current situation where you are? I know it's tricky and lots of different balls in the air.
Yeah, I mean, it's challenging from every different parts of the world, from different parts of the industries. But I think if you take 50% of our business and encompasses within the sports and leisure, so from stadiums through to venues, I mean, it is difficult to work on the busiest day of the year. We might need close to 30,000 staff across the UK if every venue was to happen at the same time, trying to, a bit like Lee, work out who we've still got and who still wants to continue engaging with us. The ones that we've been able to manage to redeploy and getting them back to their venues at some point in the next, 3 to 6 months. And then the recruitment around it. And we've been through a couple of false dawns with, yes, you can open stadiums in November, and then just as you start to ramp up, it gets ripped away from you again. And what it's done, it's created more uncertainty because people think they've got a job to come back to, and then suddenly we're taking it away from them again. So the flexibility in our approach now needs to be slightly different to what we've ever looked at before, which is why the cross-sectoring through our different sectors is going to be more important than ever. So whereas we've been very fortunate that we've managed to continue operating in several different parts of our business, in all intents and purposes, healthcare has been probably one of the busiest areas you can possibly imagine. And, we've seen record numbers of people needed to work in those environments. Now, what that's enabled us to do is to put people in there to secure their jobs, but then we utilize them again when we start to see sports events, etc., reopening. And then we need to make sure we've got a robust enough recruitment plan to make sure we can drive it through. Lee's looking at 4,000. I mean, we're looking at 4,000 a month from April onwards at this minute in time across all our different parts of the business. Now, normally we'd have ongoing 12-month recruitment all year round. We've had to stop, start. So the challenge is it's just phenomenal. Now we need to make sure we resource it correctly. We can utilize the people we've got in our business, and then we need to make sure we've got a positive message to go out to the marketplace, because there is so much uncertainty, and even people that we've known and I've known for a long period of time have taken jobs in a variety of different fields now because of that uncertainty, Ellie. So we've got a huge job when we do reopen to, create that sort of feeling that we are going to be up and running, we are going to get people back, and we can take them on a journey. And as scary as that is, it's also exceptionally exciting because we get to reinvent the wheel almost. What we've always done in the past necessarily hasn't worked. And Lee's made some great points then about 22-year-olds running a £2 million business. These are the sort of stories we can really go out and start to promote and really look differently at the way that we've approached it.
Yeah, for sure. And the numbers you talked about were pretty huge, but they're not actually huge for you guys, right? Those numbers are pretty normal. I go back to thinking about Ascot, I think, who and some of our team actually joined race day, and I think it was 20,000 people just on that one day at Ascot. It's just absolutely enormous.
Yeah, I mean, it is a challenge, and from the biggest venues that we do, you can be talking a Six Nations game where you might end up with, we have 1,000 chefs that work at Twickenham alone. Do you know what I mean? So let alone everything else that goes with it. So it is a moving carrot, but it's always been that way. So we know that we can attract people to the one-off events when they happen, because the tangible nature of our workforce means that they want to come and work at those great events and do it. What we've got to do now as an industry is try and create a process where people can get involved in, we talk about development, and we can start putting in place to make sure that we can go back to the people that have been sat on furlough and start upgrading their skills and try and work with them. There is so much that we've got to try and go through to improve what we do, not just within Compass, but within everything else, to create that stability within the industry to say, yes, we want to come back, and we want to come back fighting.
Totally. Just a quick reminder, if everyone wouldn't mind turning off their cameras. I think there might still be a few cameras on. I just got a note to ask everyone to do that, so if you wouldn't mind. That, Ryan, leads us to a really nice question about what are we doing right now, and it's one that I know Lee's keen to talk about because they're doing a lot as well. So what are you doing right now as a business? All those people, as you talk about, that are home on furlough, how are you keeping them engaged right now and training? And kind of, I guess it's a question for both of you two, but also be fascinated. There's so many great people on the call. I'd love to hear and pop it in the chat, because everyone can read it and we can share it after. What are the things that you're doing now to keep people engaged while they're on furlough? And if there's any differences with how you're handling that this time round versus last time round, that would be interesting to hear as well. Ryan, do you want to go first?
Wow. I mean, yeah. So I think first time round, it was a shock to everyone's system. So, obviously, our journey we've been on with Flow to try and create a platform where we can people can continue working at home, can continue learning new skills. We can update them on the current COVID-19 changes. We can show them and link ourselves into the likes of the apprenticeships and the variety of different optional training we've got to do outside of it. Communication's been a really key, and it's really difficult. Everyone's, I sit here on my own for my 11th month in my home office. Do you know what I mean? We all have our own challenges to get around. That as well has been a real challenge. So trying to create a variety of different communication methods where we have helplines for people that are struggling within Compass. We've created a, weekly newsletters that goes out. Individual teams have done stuff for their fixed term teams to keep them out, ongoing. And then we came through the lighter. We thought the summer we started to see some movement. Then it became slightly a different type of communication about a positive message about reopenings. We looked at how we trained, and we'd done everything offline and what we could bring online, how we could create environments for people to, like the mentoring system that we've done, or, my training team that we've created have done an amazing job to onboard nearly 6,000 people since October, to take them through the new processes that we had and make them feel involved in stuff. And that, trying to do 10 people at a time over teams in a variety of different methods, has been really tough. So the use of technology now has overwhelmed everything that we've done. However, we still need to keep a personal touch, and that's where the challenge is always going to come in. So they're the things that we're looking to try and change the way that we work. We're looking at the way that we communicate with people. That's been really, really important. And actually understanding where people are, the mental welfare piece has been so important, because it is tough. And then people have had chance to take stock and look at what they can do with their careers and where they can go next. So it's a continuous ongoing development, because every week there's a new hurdle, something new we have to look at. There's new for my wants and purposes. There's new processes and procedures we need to get out and trying to create, utilizing Ellie, there's no the flow process that we've been through to create something that was dynamic and it's not been done before. It's been really key to us to be able to make sure that by utilizing your technology, we've been able to create a real positive message and continuously communicate. Has it been perfect? No, nowhere near.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got such a large body of people that you're never going to touch anybody. But what we want to try and do now is continue this development, and that's what this is for. So, you know, just like everybody else, you know, any things that people are doing differently that we could learn upon and take from, you know, I'm interested to see what Lee's been doing, because he's got a whole different set of stuff. That's exciting for us, because then we can really become better at what we do.
Yeah, totally. I agree completely. And Lee, that was, you said this is the busiest Jan you've ever had because everyone wants development, and I love that. That's fun. Is there a theme of the people who want development, or is there a theme about the topics they're looking for? Like, tell us what's been keeping you busy.
If I take it chronologically, if I can, on lockdown 1, I think in the first few weeks it was quite new to everybody, and I think everyone was having that time to themselves. But then after Easter last year, we started seeing people requesting development, and I'll be honest, we dipped our toe in the water of virtual learning. But I think what the pandemic's done for a lot of businesses and a lot of industries is maybe accelerated things by 2 or 3 years. So if you take cash payments, I mean, cash is dying. Today they're talking about moving the payments to £100 on without putting your PIN in. That's accelerated, and I think that virtual learning is to truly blended workshops has accelerated virtual learning by maybe 2 or 3 years. I've got a very talented lady who runs our digital learning, and she's been pushing for this. So it's like all her Christmases come at once, and it's a nightmare because she's been asked to recreate everything as virtual learning. So if I go back to the story, when we started having people say, I want to continue my development, we're lucky in the fact that we get big investment from our private equity to invest in people's development, and we're well known for it. And we started seeing the people that are on the career pathway, and I'm talking hundreds of people, starting to engage with us and say, I want to do something. So we spent our time working out how people could carry on working through the career pathway whilst they weren't in the pubs, the restaurants, the bars, the nightclubs, which isn't the easiest thing, but actually there's a lot of things they can do. So we've accelerated our courses becoming virtual, but there's also a lot of self-development people can do. I mean, it's amazed me how many people TED Talks were new to them. You know, no matter how many people, it's amazing the people's reaction when you introduce them to Simon Sinek and you know, the people that are really good on TED Talks and YouTube. So, and I think especially for maybe the Gen Zs, that's the normal way of learning anyway. So I think that we've had different levels that we've had to do. We've had people in the career pathway that are already engaged with learning, and then how do we make that accessible to them, and virtual classrooms. And actually, virtual classrooms won't go away, and they are just as much as I don't want everything to be classroom based, nor do I want everything to be virtual learning based either. I've been talking to some universities, and they plan to go and stay totally virtual now. I don't want it to go that way either. So I know Naomi's listening.
Yeah, you mixed all that experience of the Freshers Week and all, you know, that. Yeah. So, I mean, that's a university extreme example, but that connection in a classroom and meeting people and the actual experience of being in the venues and being in Twickenham or being in a club and feeling it is, you can't get away from that. So no. I think everyone would agree the blended approaches is what you want.
Do, Ellie, what maybe you can do is start questioning what. I think everyone, if I was going to give one tip, is go back to your classroom-based learning and decide what's essential that has to be classroom. What are you trying to achieve through classroom learning? And if it doesn't have to be classroom learning, then do it a different way. Be that virtual, be that work-based, be that reading, or whatever it is. So we've carried on through the lockdowns, various lockdowns, in allowing people to access their learning, but to answer your question about what have we seen differently, we've seen people asking, and then what we've tried to do is really tap into the disengaged or people that just haven't engaged in the thought I'll just stay off. And how do you tap into them? And that's slightly harder. But in lockdown 3, we've certainly seen a difference. Ryan mentioned people's mental health. We're definitely seeing a difference in people reacting with mental well-being. And actually, I'm not feeling great in this lockdown, and I'm struggling in this lockdown. You know, I've got one of my team. One of my favourite quotes is he keeps saying he's completed Netflix. So what does he do now? He literally thinks he's completed it like a game. So I think there's been this boredom factor and then this realization factor. And I also think, then last bit I'll say is, I think there's habit forming. Everything is habit forming. And we are going to have to try and break habits as well at the end of lockdown.
God, really good point.
I think some of the reactions we've had to contacting people to say, right, we want you to do this COVID safe module to make sure that when you come back, you understand what the rules are around COVID safe, and they may change again. But and the vast majority have been great. Yeah, of course I'll do that. But some of the reactions, Ellie, have been quite disappointing. Of how dare you contact me? I'm on furlough. You know, it's well, actually, it's a condition of furlough, that self-development and etc. So my point being, I think we're going to have to break habits of people. And you may come onto this, but I think that when people are looking at where they want to join to get a job, I think there's certain things they'll be looking for, but I'm quite sure you'll ask that coming up. But yeah, I think thinking about what habits people have formed and breaking that will be essential.
No, do you know, it's a really good point, and I haven't thought about it in that way, and you're right. And just even straight up things like what time people get out of bed, right, or you know, how well they eat or exercise in a day, all these things that I actually believe massively in how we'd and those things are really good for your well-being. We keep all of us talking about well-being, and it's a huge passion subject of mine. And actually this week, a client and Harry, maybe I know you're on the call, maybe you could post a link to it, but we've got a wellbeing module that we've given out, which I love, but and it's a small piece of the puzzle, right, an online module, but it's useful. So one of our clients was asking us, what other resources have you got? Like what other resources could you recommend? So I'll get Harry to post a link for some stuff that one of our partners have, Diageo Bar Academy. They've got a whole load of free content on wellbeing, which is really, really good. Again, if anyone else in the chat knows of some good wellbeing content that they want to share on here, please do, because everyone likes something slightly different, and it's just a wealth of resource available for it.
Ellie,
And
can I just come back to you on a point with that as well? Is I've spoken to a number of people about this. We set up something early on in Stonegate, or Naomi did, set up something called Stonegate Community, and it was a portal everyone could access, and there was a week on mental health, a week on personal finance, a week on fun, a week on entertaining the kids. Yeah. And we had some serious hits on that, but obviously it dissipates. And I got asked, well, why are you doing that? All of it's available on YouTube or wherever. Yeah, it might be, but some people won't go, either don't know or won't go and access that. So I think it's slightly lazy thinking to think, yeah, but it's all out there. I think pulling it together in one place that team can access, I think is really important. And the amount of people that have said, yeah, but it's already, you're just repackaging what's already available. Yeah, absolutely. We're stealing all the best stuff that's out there and putting it in one place. Absolutely.
And that's it, the simple access, because when people are feeling overwhelmed or they don't know where to start, actually having loads of different places to go is actually just a blocker in itself. I've seen some people post some great stuff already on the thread, and we've got a good question from Ted Blackwell from Springboard. How do you see some of the best routes to combat nerves amongst staff that are unsure about the safety of returning to work? Great question. Who wants to go first? Ryan, do you want to go first?
I mean, it's been a challenge, Ted, that's faced us since we started getting involved in a variety of different aspects of this business as we moved into lockdown. So even with the support that we've been given to the Department of Health and their test centres, trying to sort of create the right environment for people to go into was all about education. So for me, it's been about making sure that we give them and answered all their questions. I mean, what Lee said about having a community where they can ask questions, and it's a really good point. You know, we do take for granted how that people learn, and you know, they can see stuff at the touch of a button, but actually repackaging stuff and actually giving it to in one place actually makes a big difference. And it's very similar to what we did when we launched our testing center recruitment project, is the fact that we had to create an environment where They could understand, they could see what was going on, they could answer or ask as many questions as they like to make sure that they feel reassured. We took some videos of the sites so we could post it and show them whether we worked with the Department of Health with the tools that they had. And then really the best way was communication, physically speaking to people that had questions, because a lot of people don't, I sit in here saying, my daughter often does run through this when I'm on a call. It's embarrassing, and some people don't have the facilities to do it correctly. And sometimes a telephone call to say, hi, I know you've got an issue, let's talk through it, is so reassuring.
Yeah.
And then it's just about creating the confidence when they get there. And it's a case of doing what you tell them they're going to do, and giving them the confidence to speak out if they see that something's not being done correctly. So especially COVID-19, the ability to say, people aren't following the rules. What's the process if we've noticed it? How do we raise that, and creating that open community as such so that people can freely talk about it? And then we become self-policing for each other then, because everyone's got everyone's best interest at heart. Because the quicker we can get through the testing, the vaccines, the quicker we can open as an industry. And if you create that joined up approach, which is what, and I've seen that Jenny's on this call, who's from my team, Joanne, we spent so long doing that, making sure that everybody understood the reasons behind things. We're not being awkward. We're not telling you to do it just because we're authoritarian. We're telling you because it's benefits for everybody. And that helped create assurance. And then once people are confident, that spreads so quickly, because they'll tell everybody else they'll feel confident. And then before you know it, people were really comfortable. And I look at the first week that we dealt with healthcare, and we were trying to support them with waiters and porters from our sports business going into work in hospitals. That creation of to make them feel safe when they were going to go into a, let's be honest, highly contagious COVID area. We saw so many good stories coming out of it, that they were just talking about what we'd done, and everybody that got involved in it. And that to me is the way that we're going to have to continue that process, that self-policing, that continuous knowledge, and that open and honest communication, and we will get there.
Yeah, that's so awesome. And Ryan, how many staff have you got working in vaccination centres or test centres at the moment? Do you know? Say that again. I couldn't hear you there. Say that again. 4,500.
Wow.
That's fantastic. And I can't, that's such a great thing to be a part of. But I can imagine that would be something that maybe people would have a little bit of anxiety around. Another question for you. Do you find that after, so they come in and you do all that great work beforehand, do you see their anxiety like phasing as they come in and they actually see, do you know what, these guys have got this in hand? Or does it go up? Does it go down? How do you find that?
I think it's a combination from what we've been doing. I think it's great telling them before they get out on site, and we can share with them what it's going to look like, show them the site plans, show them the rules and regulations. We've created some great online training for them to follow through. Actually, what we've done now is we now do almost a 2-day site induction site in small groups, so then we can get them out on site. They can meet their managers before we open a site, and they can go through everything, and they can see it, and they can understand it, and they can put it in. And that first day when they come in, it's always a case of everybody's nervous because no one knows what to expect. But I'd sit here and say within half an hour or 40 minutes, you can see everybody just relaxes a little bit, and they become more in tune with how it's going to work. And it's been, some of the stuff that we've had to put up with, and across, not just within this part of what we're doing, but I suppose in many people's, it's been tough, and we've had some really sad stories that have come out of it. But for me, watching, and I'm going to go back to my head chef that we've got that's currently working in one of our car parks at a stadium directing traffic. He sends me a message every week to let me know how much he's enjoying it, just being back out in the pub.
I love that.
With people again. And he was so anxious to start off with because he was terrified. And he said he feels safer there than he does at home with his little girl.
Exactly.
It is that process.
Also great. Yeah, great to be working as well, and great to be contributing. I was talking to one of my colleagues yesterday who was speaking to a pub company that we work with, and he was hearing a story about one of the chefs who's just lost immense amounts of weight because he hasn't done anything for such a long period of time, and he's just sitting in front of the Netflix one you're talking about, Lee, and possibly drinking a little bit too much, possibly going to bed too late and getting up late and all these things. And so having that opportunity to go out and move, whatever it is that you're doing, I think that there's a real concern right across the industry about people who haven't been able to do that. And so we've got a responsibility to look after them and make sure we get them back in and moving and kind of with a focus as fast as we can. And Lee, what about you?
I think Ryan captured that beautifully. I just wrote a few notes down. I think that the safety element is really important. The knowing they're coming back to a safe environment. So when we came back after lockdown 1, that was such a big factor in people returning. And also possibly, and not everyone will like this, the early adopters coming back first. So we had people not want to come back. Well, we didn't need everyone back at first. So we didn't panic about that. And we let the people prepared to come back, because actually they soon talked to their friends and colleagues saying, actually, yeah, it's fine. We've got all the process in place, the PPE, etc. So I think that's important. I think the communications, Ryan's mentioned, our CEO has done a vlog twice a week. He's in the 120, I think he's done now. And everyone can access it, and that whole piece of communicating, and we're in this together, and this is what we're doing, and this is what we're doing to make sure it's safe when you come back. So I think that's key. I think an induction day is going to be extremely important. I don't just mean inducting new team members. I think a reintroduction day when you're back. And then the other point I really think as well is there's this element of we're going to back you for whatever decisions you make with the customers. So when Ryan mentioned some people not sticking to the rules, actually, if you don't feel comfortable and you've asked that customer to put the mask on or whatever the rules are going to be, then do what you think is right and we'll back you with that. Yeah. I think that is a really important message for your point around how do we make sure that our teams feel safe to come back. They have to understand for the odd percentage that can't stick to the rules, then actually we'll back you on whatever action you take.
Yeah, that's a really important one. I agree. And actually, as soon as they have that backing and they've seen that backing a few times, the way that they deliver that with a customer is going to be much more confident as well, right? They're going to know that they can just nip it in the bud straight away. It's also, I guess, that kind of links me to my next question, because one of the next questions was around how are you planning for that re-onboarding? One of my questions was going to be, are you planning to re-onboard and re-induct all the existing staff members? I think one of the things, there's obviously all the new people that need to learn about how to be COVID safe and secure, but also they need to learn vision, values, culture, all that stuff. But actually, if you've not been in the business for 10 months or however long, it might be that you need to do that again. So do you have a kind of different process or thought process for people that have worked with you before versus completely new staff, or will everybody going through the same induction onboarding process?
Gosh, I don't know how to give an easy one. We've got an added complexity in this, that we've brought 2 enormous businesses together whilst this as well, so Stonegate and Enterprise Inn. So we've had a slight
time, really, not much going on.
Yeah, not much going on. So values have changed slightly to reflect both. The way the company is structured. So we also communicated this all the way through, but that's going to change things as well. I think for us, whilst we will provide the tools, this might only be right not maybe right for everybody, but we think it's down to the individual manager in the premises that's managing that. So however they feel, because they've been communicating with their teams all the way through. And I think that's partly to the previous question, why maybe we're not too worried about how people are feeling coming back, because they're staying in touch with them. And I think WhatsApp has been a godsend through it, because all the managers have WhatsApp groups with the team. So I think we will induct as usual, but in the reintroduction piece, we've created the COVID safe modules. We've actually created a second one to update that, and that could have to change again depending on what is decided. Heaven forbid they give us notice. But so I think whilst we give the tools and we give advice, I think it's important that we're not seen as the big bad company deciding what happens, and actually how that is done is down to those operating the business, because they're the operators, not us. I might like to think I'm an operator, but it's been 25 years since I was.
Yeah. Well, did you have something to add there, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a sort of similar approach in many ways, where we have many sites with their own GMs and have kept hold of their entire central team and have been able to communicate via WhatsApp and that sort of stuff, and they will engage with them in a different way. Our biggest challenge is going to be the people that do the 6 hours a week or the 10 hours a week or the 12 hours a week that have been on furlough, or some of them would even, stuck in between. So, Jenny and my learning development team, we've created both a brand new onboarding process, utilizing online technology that everybody has access to, which then we emphasize the visions and the values, and we've tried to encourage as many people to get involved in these groups as possible. And then we've created a reopening plan by venue that's quite specific. So, let's be honest, many people haven't worked in 10 or 12 months by the time we come back. So it's actually getting them all together, obviously in socially distanced groups, as you should say, but to try and reinvigorate them and try and get them back to what we're trying to deliver, because that service has changed, the way that we deliver. Gone are the days in our industry where people will be sort of at buffets initially, do you know what I mean, helping themselves as the racing's going on or as the stadium's going on. We've had to change all of those service standards. I mean, Lee's point about cash, do you know what I mean? I mean, cash is nearly gone now. That whole piece where we used to stood at a bar in a race course taking loads of cash over, suddenly that's all changed. So what that's the opportunity to do is to redesign that whole program for people of what we're going to take them through, actually invest money in, rather than just turning up and getting maybe it's a 4-hour training re-entry. We've planned it over 2 or 3 sort of days with a variety of different virtual learning and then on-site inductions to re-induct them to everything, show them how the queues to the toilets are going to be different, or show them where we've had to reposition tables as a result of it. So we know that Mr. Jones has always sat in the window for 10 years, but he no longer can do because we've had to move it. That's the level of detail that we've had to go into, ready to prepare for reopening. And then it has been, without doubts, from our fixed terms, a real challenge to try and picture what's going to happen. But it's an ongoing process.
Lots
and we'll
to
learn.
do. And I love that detail is incredible, because I have to say, and I won't mention the name, but after the second round of lockdown, I went away with my son in the October break, and we obviously stayed in Scotland because we couldn't go anywhere else, and we stayed in a hotel, and I felt bad for them, because of course it's difficult to do it, but you could tell they hadn't had any of that. There was no attention to detail. The staff didn't have a clue what they were doing. And so, I feel like what customers and guests are going to be nervous about eating out and drinking out. So we really need the staff to be really confident in what they're doing, to reassure the guests as well. And all that sort of attention to detail is kind of what makes hospitality amazing. So if you're going out and you're kind of going, right, I'm going to do it, I'm going to be brave, I'm going to go to a restaurant, go to a bar, I think people are going to be desperate to do it, don't get me wrong. But I feel like that experience for me was you could tell that it had just been completely missed. And I think they probably would have lost a lot of customers who would never go back based on that experience, whereas they probably had more customers than they would have ever had before, and it was a really great opportunity for them to shine. So I feel like that attention to detail and that training is going to be really, really important.
I think add to that, Ellie, the press who don't understand our industry are going to be all over us.
Completely.
Yeah. The press are going to be looking for things that are going wrong. I don't want to demonise them all, but we are going to be under such scrutiny when we reopen. You saw it in Nottingham when they had the Christmas market on, and the fact that they weren't socially distanced. One of our nightclub managers was telling me that, late night, not necessarily nightclub, was saying that when the police came down the road, they were make sure the customers spread out in the queue to get in. The next police came out, said that your queue goes beyond where they're allowed to queue. So this constant and actually Ted's put a question in the chat saying, to that point, actually it's not necessarily just our teams inside. Security teams have a big role to play in this and quite often bear the brunt of it. And I think that we've definitely seen that with security teams.
And I think Lee's points are valid, because what we've also had to do, Ellie, is re-educate our guests as well. Because if you're a waiter and you've got a face mask on and you've been wearing it for 8 hours, I mean, that is not comfortable. I mean, I did a whole day at King's College Hospital with a face mask on, and I've got a beard, and it is not an enjoyable experience. It is not an enjoyable experience. So that means then we need to change the way that we manage our people and give them the ability to go off for breaks, and also explain to the staff that it's not to the guests that it's not going to be service as usual. You're not going to get. It's not going to be rapid pace as they used to, or things will take a little bit longer because of the processes and procedures you have to put in place. And it's amazing. You talk about that. I went to my local bar and they had a lovely little sort of plaque on the table that taught them through everything that they'd done and how they'd done things, but the knock-on effect that would have to your service, and to try and preempt you to be not more organised, but to actually have some more patience when it came to, you order your food, it may take a little bit longer to get to you because you had to have less chefs on the line, for example. So normally we'd have 7, now we can only have 4. And that, again, it comes down to communication. So if we're upfront and honest about that sort of stuff, and I love Lee's bit about making sure that we've empowered our teams to make decisions, that's got to be, if anything, nothing else comes out of all this, the ability to empower our teams to feel confident to make decisions needs to be our biggest learning, because it's something that perhaps we've all taken for granted in the past, or we've never focused on as much as we should do. You know, it is such a great strength, and making sure that the message is uniform and we spread that communication piece, that's going to be really important.
Totally agree. Well, I'm going to come on to a bit more of a tricky question now, and it links back to Lee, what you mentioned before about God forbid we get some notice. So I think obviously what we're I guess one of my questions is, how are you determining what you need in terms of resource? So you've already mentioned, Lee, you're looking for 4,000 people, but how are you managing that? So you've worked out that that's how many people that you need. When are you going to start recruiting for them? How much time are you going to give yourself, given that none of us really know yet when we're going to open back up? How are you managing that as a business at Stonegate, Lee?
Don't know. So we've worked it out by looking at levers, but we've also used some of our communication out to the team. So when we've reissued the COVID safe, our second version, asking people to complete it, if we've had nothing back from team members after a number of drives on that, we've sort of taken the point that maybe they've gone or they're very disengaged. And some guesswork, some finger in the air saying that's what we need. We're currently putting together the process. We put a little project team together of how we're going to do this. Our sites all have access to a tool that I'm sure some of our people joining have used. We use networks. Each site can put their own adverts on, and the system then screens by killer questions so that the managers aren't interviewing hundreds of people. And actually that's worked quite well, and it's what jobs boards you use or whatever vehicles we want to use to drive that out there. What we do know from the feedback we're getting is actually what new joiners are looking for now is companies that look after the people, and I don't just mean in remuneration, but in safety, in having a voice, in mental well-being. And still the biggest question we get is about career development. So can I develop with my career? And we've got masses of figures and evidence and that proves the point that we do. But I think that what we are definitely going to be focusing on, how we decide that we advertise this, is actually, I mean, everyone's going to be watching this going, no shit, Sherlock, but it's actually what are the benefits of coming to us? Not you're lucky to come to us. Actually, what are we going to offer you? What's in it for you? And how are we going to make sure that you are safe, both physically and mentally? Yeah,
for sure. And that does feel like a shift, right, after COVID, where and it feels like maybe that's been happening for a while, but that piece about actually us wanting to be a really attractive industry. And I've spoken again at loads of different people that I know on the call here, and I've had various conversations with all of them about this, about how do we differentiate ourselves from the guy down the road who's paying 5p more, or allows them to, have tattoos or whatever, whereas we're a bit more formal and we don't allow that, all these things. And I think that's great. It'll be overall great for our industry to have people competing to get the best people and trying to up our game so we look after people really well and we really invest in it. Surely that's got to just be good for everyone. It's going to attract better talent and make sure we look after them well.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. I totally agree. I think we've always competed for people, but I think it's, again, going back to my point about virtual learning, it's accelerated the pace we have to do this. I think the point to add to that, Ellie, which we've never been good at as an industry, is continuing to work on our perceptions, the perceptions of our industry, because politicians have proved they don't understand our industry, and the press have proved they don't understand our industry, but then and education have proved they don't understand our industry. Mm-hmm. But then I do some navel gazing and say, what have we done about that? I went to catering college. I've not been back to catering colleges to try and change the view of our industry. One of my favourite things I talk about is when we were putting the standards together for apprenticeships, because they went across all of our industry. One of the pieces was how to cook a sole bonne femme. Nobody's eaten a sole bonne femme for 20 frigging years, but it's still in the apprenticeship. but then we haven't been back to education establishments to say, actually, this is our industry, and over 50% of our industry isn't hotels. And I'm not knocking hotels, but actually pub food and restaurant food is a huge thing. And also 1 in 10 jobs in the UK is hospitality. I don't know if we've worked hard enough. I think Kate Nichols has done a fantastic job with UKH, but I don't know if we worked hard enough to actually help change the perception of our industry either.
I totally agree. And I think, Ryan, you touched on it earlier. This hasn't done any great favors for our industry. I think we will also have a lot of people who will be potentially disengaged with the stop-start, you have a job, you don't have a job, So I think we've got an even bigger task on our hands to tell people the stories of why to come and work with us. And we've got a huge amount of recruitment to do, and lots of people looking for work, lots of great people looking for work. So we just need to find those right stories and messaging, right?
Yeah, I mean, for us, there's so many different avenues to this. We've had to break down what you're looking for from a person and look at the skill set that we can transfer from other industries, from other sectors. I mean, Lee's point, we need to create a positive message to go out about the hospitality and catering industry as a whole. Do you know what I mean? We perhaps in silos we're really good at it, in other silos we're not good at it. We also need to change the experience that people have working from us, because unfortunately, whether it's TV, whether it's media, have produced this environment where they think everyone's just going to get shouted and screamed at, do you know what I mean, rather than the rewards that come with it. So we need to flip it on its head and actually show why it is a benefit to come to us. We've worked over the last 3 or 4 months with a variety of different aspects of this world to try and get different categories of people that we'd never approached before. We're working with homeless charities like Radicals, which has been so exciting for us to get involved in, because people unfortunately have got different stories of what the pandemic's done to us, and our ability to actually affect their lives and take them on a journey and a roller coaster has been exciting. I mean, with the work that Jenny's doing in creating, as Lee said, career pathways for people, so that there's nothing off the table. Times a sideways step from being a chef into accounts, somebody would never have thought of before. But actually, we need to break down all these barriers and say, why don't you go and work in a school? Let me show you what that looks like. Let me show you what's working in a finance department is. We've got, as I said, I use the chefs that work in car parks at this minute in time. We've taken on people within our central team that have come from a variety of different backgrounds to try and make sure that we look differently to how we recruit. We're going to have to go to many, many different areas. And without doubt, the strongest recruitment tool is always going to be word of mouth. I'm sure Lee will tell you that he'll have a pub that'll have a great manager, a great team, and that will attract naturally great people that will want to come and work there, because that's the environment that's created. We need to take that small family model and create it across our entire portfolio and make sure that we're always singing the praises, telling the good stories. People only ever tell you when something's gone wrong. I got really frustrated at the TV the other day, because you're right, people were saying, Eat Out to Help Out was the crisis maker. My goodness, what planet were these people on? It's those people that don't really want to follow the rules, because I tell you what, having been in Eat Out and having worked in that environment, I don't think there was a safe. Unfortunately, what happens is there'll be one pub in one restaurant out of 500 that will make a mistake, and that's what they'll drill out on. But we as an industry need to stand up to that and start saying, whoa, that's not how it is at all. You need to come and see what our stories are. And then vlogs and stuff that Lee's been going on, but that's the sort of stuff we all need to be getting on the bandwagon. Share our good stories, share what difference we've made to people's lives in this pandemic, because without doubts, I'm sure we've people that would never normally have done what they've done, or were worried about where their next paycheck was coming. We've managed to help these guys out and change the way that we approach it.
Come on. For sure, absolutely, Ryan. It's probably one of the things that I'm most proud somebody's managing to get their kid out to the playground. Ryan, it's one of the things that I've been so at first round. I mean, watching what people did to help. People creating food banks in hotels and restaurants, and hotels putting up key workers, and the industry just was phenomenal, and it's always like that, right? Even just the footballer who was doing the free school meals. I'm going to forget his name. That's so bad. Yeah, right. And so the government didn't put the free school meals in, and hospitality, along with loads of other industries, jumped to help. These things are incredible, and I agree. We need to be talking about that a lot more, and just shouting about the great things that we do. I also would say, when I had one bad experience at that hotel up north, but actually, overwhelmingly, the hospitality that we had, with all the restrictions that they had to apply. So, you know, no alcohol in Scotland, not so much down south where you guys are, you know, music, social distancing. I mean, they had all this, and they still managed to create a great experience with all those things in place. And I remember just sitting there, just tingling, looking around, going, this is awesome that they've managed to do this, given the circumstances. So imagine what we can do when we get it a bit more back to normal. So I guess to finish off on that question, resourcing levels, how do you guys, you touched on it a little bit, Lee, how you actually go about it, and the killer questions, sort of filtering it down so that your teams don't have a million different people to interview. Are there any specific tools or agencies or stuff that you guys use that you would recommend to everyone listening? Interested to know how you plan to go about it. Do you have your own process? Obviously, Ryan, that's pretty much everything your team do, right? But I also find that interesting because you've got so many people, you know, to have that specific resource is absolutely essential for you.
Yeah, and I mean, we've had to change as the business how we operate with that. So we've now got a team of, 32 that's ongoing, that deals with all the recruitment and the resourcing and the journey that we take people on. We've made the journey more standardized across our entire portfolio of clients, so everyone gets the same experience, the same journey, they understand the processes behind it. And then, as I said, it's about us, and I use the term to my team, we've got to kiss a lot of frogs. We're going to have to go out into many places where we'd never have been before, to look for the people that were the talent that we want to bring in. We need to make sure that we've gone in and looked at, whether that is from a college perspective and gone in and done a different type of way of attracting them, or whether or not it's going into, different sectors. I've been working closely with Amazon, for example, with all of their teams that they bring in just for their golden quarter. What happens to those 500, 600, thousands of people afterwards? Where do they go? How can we tap into those and say, we can take you on a journey within catering? And then it's about being multi-skilling people to give them as much opportunity as possible. Don't just say, great, you're a waiter and that's it. Let's see what else we can do. And Lee's point about development is just so important now. No longer can we sit there and go, you're a waiter and that's it. Now we have to continue that development with people, and make sure that we've opened up and train them properly, give them the tools to be able to deliver. And then we will become a better industry as a result of it, because then we will really have a multifaceted team that can do a bit of everything, but also can see what else is out there. So I know Jenny's spent a lot of time with me trying to create a communication path so we can share what other opportunities are available, whether it's within Compass or whether it's within Sodexo or Delaware. That makes whether it's in Lee's business, for example, it's not about us holding on to them. It's about making sure that people stay in this industry for as long as they can and actually help drive it forward. Because as a collective, I don't think there's a stronger industry in the entire world than hospitality and catering. From your first experience to working in that first event or bar that you've been into to, 30 years later when you're chief executive of a company. Do you know what I mean? My goodness, the skills that you learn, you'll never get anywhere else. And we need to continue that drive.
Yeah, and I'll add to that, Ellie. I've just had one bit to that is, unfortunately, there are going to be fallers in our industry. There already have been, and there will be more. Once the support finishes from the government. So to back Ryan's point up, how do we keep those people in the industry? Let's tap into them and let's not lose them, because it's sad enough that thousands of businesses will go to the wall in the hospitality industry, but let's keep them people, because there will be enough. The demand, I think, will be enormous for our industry, for the good times, and actually giving people something to look forward to when they're allowed to come back. I think we need to keep those people.
Totally, and I think so. If we kind of recap some of the things we're talking about there, sharing more of the great stories of the industry. Would love to hear again from any of the people on this call if you've heard of amazing things that colleagues that or businesses that have been doing. Love to hear about that. We're getting our 5-minute warning here. Also, I think though, that whole the career development stuff, and I'm a great example of that, because I remember being a waitress. I'm not going to tell you how long ago because it'll make me feel old, but somebody saying to me, why don't you just stay in hospitality? And I was horrified at the idea. I thought, what? Absolutely not. Like, that's ridiculous. And I, you know, however many years later, I've done so many different jobs, and I would never have pictured that. And I think if we can do a better job about outlining the different things available and the different areas that support it, drinks brands and suppliers and marketing and HR and, you know, all these things. So operations, I think, is the only bit that people really associate with hospitality, isn't it? But there's a whole world around it of different things. So I agree. I think we can do a much better job on that.
But also take away the stigma, Ellie. Take away the stigma in our industry. We seem to be the only country that has a stigma around this industry. And I think we've got to be part of the solution for that, of how we help education to understand that actually it is a good career. It can be extremely varied. It can be extremely rewarding. And I think we've got to do better at that.
Don't you think we need to do a better job? And I think there's people like Tom Kerridge that has done a lot of work on this for chefs, about doing better, about setting up actually what are the working conditions for people, though. Actually, we're not going to get you here and ask you to do 80-hour weeks with no breaks, and like that sort of perception is quite common again. And so a lot of people saying, actually, no, we're gonna create really great conditions and career pathways and all the things that you'd expect everywhere else, and that lots of brilliant operators already do. And arguably, these will be the ones that everyone's going to want to work for first, right? If you know, ones like yourselves and a load of other people that are on the call, we're all going to be fighting for great people. So yeah, people are going to have to up their game, which I guess is super exciting. We've only got a couple of minutes left, so any more questions from anyone listening, please fire on. Or Ryan, any kind of final comments from you before we finish up?
No, for me, I mean, it's been great. Thanks for inviting me to this. It's been great to share some of our best practices and what we can do to try and continue to reinvigorate this industry. And, you know, I think I'm going to echo what Lee says. And, you know, when we do come out of lockdown eventually, I mean, it is going to be all guns blazing, because I think that people are desperate to get out and enjoy some of the amazing hospitality experiences that we've delivered. What we have to do is not lose sight of that and make sure that all the processes and procedures that we put in place to make sure we can deliver it, we continue with that message, because we are, you know, as an industry, we stop and start, we stop and start, we stop and start. So that development, that journey, that creating the positivity around it is what's going to make us be even better than we are now.
Mm.
Agreed.
Yeah, I like that. The last bit I would say is love your people, look after your people. I still get asked, after 25 years in this industry, I still get asked, yeah, but what happens if we train them and they leave? And my answer is always, what happens if you don't train them and they stay?
Yeah.
So, and I think that to Ryan's point, look, if we train them and they leave, at least they've got great skills and they'll go somewhere else with it. But let's invest in our people and look after our people and be part of the solution for this industry, not the problem.
Yeah.
Totally. And honestly, thank you both so much. I've really enjoyed chatting to you today. I love these conversations and hearing what people are doing and all the comments in the thread. It's been so nice to see. I had a really fascinating conversation yesterday with Richard, who's head of L&D for Whitbread, who talked me through an onboarding program that he just launched. And James and I spoke to him yesterday, and he's quickly agreed, as a follow-on to this, about how do we onboard people really well, just to talk us through that program and talk us through the ROI benefit. And I'm sure Ryan and Lee, it's something that you guys would have had a challenge with, about how do you pitch a really incredible onboarding program that might cost a little bit more to the FD, when right now, you know, everyone is counting every penny. So I'm hoping that'll be a really fascinating follow-on from this. So if anyone's interested in that, we'll be sending out links. And Lee and Ryan, thank you again so much. And
no worries.
I'll see you again very soon.
Cheers.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye.